This video is about using trig ratios to find an angle in a right triangle. So remember, in our trig ratios, we have sine, which is equal to my opposite over my hypotenuse. We have cosine, which is equal to our adjacent over hypotenuse. And we have tangent, which is equal to opposite over adjacent. So we're going to set up our ratio based on a reference angle. So in this case, x is my reference angle. So I have my opposite side across from that angle, my hypotenuse across from the right angle, and the adjacent side next to the angle. Looking at this triangle, I have numbers for side lengths on the adjacent and hypotenuse side, which means I'm going to use cosine. So the cosine of x is equal to 11 over 13. In order to solve for x, we need to use the cosine inverse. So x equals the cosine inverse 11 over 13. So we're going to go to our calculator. We're going to double check that it's highlighted in degrees. Press clear, and then we're going to enter in our equation. So second cosine gets us the cosine inverse with that little -1. And we're going to divide 11 divided by 13 in parentheses. Now remember, when you are finding an angle, we need to round to the nearest whole number. So our angle in this case would be 32 degrees. In number 2, based on my reference angle, I have my opposite side, my hypotenuse, my adjacent side. This time the opposite and the adjacent have numbers on them, which means we are going to use tan. So the tangent of x is equal to my opposite over adjacent. In order to get x by itself, we need to use the tan inverse. So in my calculator, second tan gets us the tan inverse, 5 divided by 12. And when we round, we would get that x is 23 degrees. Number 3, based on my reference angle, this would be my opposite side across from the angle. Across from the right angle is the hypotenuse, and next to the angle is the adjacent. This time we have information on our opposite and hypotenuse, which means this is going to be a sine function. So the sine of x is equal to 10 over 25. In order to solve for x, we need to use the sine inverse. So we would do second sine to get our sine inverse, and then enter our fraction, 10 divided by 25. When we round, we would get that x is 24 degrees. Now, number 4 has 2 variables, so we're still just going to solve for one and then use our property of triangle. So I'm going to solve for x, and I'm going to label my triangle based on the x. I have my opposite, my adjacent, and my hypotenuse sides. So based on having numbers on the opposite and adjacent, we're going to use tan. So the tangent of x is equal to my opposite over my hypotenuse. In order to get x by itself, we need to do the tan inverse. So in my calculator, second tan, 14 divided by 6. And that gets us 67 degrees when we round to the nearest whole number. So if x is 67 degrees, and we have a y in our triangle that we need to find the other angle. Remember that a triangle equals 180 degrees. So we can do 180 minus the 90-degree angle minus the 67 degrees we know. And when we subtract that, we would get what x is equal to. So in this case, y is 23 degrees. Because remember, all angles in a triangle are equal to 180. In number 5, we do not have a right angle yet. So first, we're going to draw an altitude in, which is going to help us to find x. So remember, an altitude forms right angles, and it bisects my base of an isosceles triangle. So my base is now 3.5 on each side. To solve for x this time, I have my opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. Because I have information on the hypotenuse and the adjacent side, I'm going to use cosine. So the cosine of x is equal to 3.5 over 6. We need to use the cosine inverse again of 3.5 divided by 6. Second cosine, 3.5 divided by 6. And we get that x is 54 degrees. So if it's an isosceles triangle, remember that both angles in the base are 54 degrees. Remember that y is representing this whole angle at the top. So to solve for y this time, we're going to do 180 minus 54 minus 54. We get that the whole angle at the top for y is 72 degrees. In number 6, a triangle ABC, measure of angle B is 90 degrees, AB is 7, and AC is 10. So we're going to draw ourselves a triangle. The important piece here is that B is the right angle, and we can put A and C in either vertex. We know that AB is 7, and we know that AC is 10, and we need to find the measure of angle A. So we'll call this X. So based on how my triangle is drawn, I would have my opposite side across from the right angle is my hypotenuse, and next to the angle that we're looking for is my adjacent. So I have information on the adjacent and the hypotenuse side. So I need to use cosine again. So the cosine of x is equal to my adjacent over my hypotenuse. So when I solve, I need to use the cosine inverse of 7 over 10. Second cosine, 7 divided by 10 in my calculator. Round to the nearest whole number, so we know that x is 46 degrees, which means that the measure of angle A is 46 degrees.